So Dave, yeah, again, I want to thank you for joining us here. We have the co-founder and CEO of Rec Philly, Dave Silver, joining us here today.
Steve, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here with my Temple folks. Graduated Temple 2013, super proud alumni. We have a partnership with the Alumni Association, so we do a ton of work with them already. So anytime we can help Temple students or faculty or staff or anything, alumni, happy to do it. So thanks for having me. I do apologize. My beard has gotten a little out of control during this quarantine season. So just kind of deal with that. But it's unfortunate. I have to be behind a screen. I'd love to be in person talking with y'all, but I am also fortunate because I am in my sweatpants and I'm not wearing shoes. I usually don't reveal that, but I figured I would for my Temple folks.
Hey, nice. That's great. Yeah. Quarantine has certainly changed a lot of things for everyone here. So, but we're glad to have you. Glad to have you here today. And kind of like I was mentioning before, I think we're going to kind of go through this interview style. So I'll kind of just shoot some questions at you. We'll have kind of a conversation and open it up to the Q&A at the end.
Yeah, awesome. If you don't mind, maybe an interactive way to start, just because I like to understand like folks that are just in the room. If y'all can hear me in the chat, if you can just put a 1 if you're a current student, or a 2 if you are an alumni, or 3 if you're staff. 1 for student, 2 for alumni, 3 for staff, just to get an understanding of just who's in the building. Cool, mostly students. Super helpful just to know who we're talking to. Cool. Yeah, Steve, take it away.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, first off, you mentioned a little bit, but I figured you could just kind of start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself and Rec Philly.
Yeah, about myself. I'm Dave. I graduated Temple 2013 undergrad. I studied advertising account management in Klein, School of Media and Communications. I think it changed the year after to the Klein School. I did a entrepreneurship minor, or like entrepreneurship certificate through the Fox School. I actually started Rec under a different brand, under a different name. It was called the Broad Street Music Group, and that was actually founded in the basement of my house on Temple's campus. I essentially, while I was still a student, I converted my basement in my house into a concert venue and like a music lounge, and I would promote on campus that every Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. we would have free music in our basement. So all you had to do is come. Your donation, your ticket was a donation to a local philanthropy. I think first we were giving money to like the Temple Police, and then it went to different philanthropies. And that idea kind of just took off. Every Thursday we had like hundreds of people, like maybe 100 people in our basement to take in this like local Temple student musicians. I did it because my best friends were hip hop artists and videographers, and we needed a place to perform in front of an audience. That idea started catching on. We eventually, once we got press that we were hosting the events in our basement, my landlord got wind that I was running a business out of my basement and kicked us out of the basement. He actually gave me an alternative. He said, you could either take out a $2 million insurance policy or for you to host your business, or you have to leave. I was not a business person. I had not a lot of experience in entrepreneurship prior to this. So I actually thought it cost me $2 million to get that insurance policy. So realizing that that's not really the case when you get an insurance policy. But I opted out, and I decided to move these basement shows to local bars and venues that were really struggling to fill the bars and venues on like a Monday or a Tuesday night. And next thing you know, while I was still in school, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we were throwing concerts all around the city for local artists. And in doing so, I was able to start developing a community and a brand for myself that I was, I cared for artists. I provided a quality platform for these artists, and I started meeting the local creative community. Next thing I know, before I even graduated, I put together about 200 concerts around the community, around Philadelphia, and in my basement. And I met, almost 1,000 artists in that time. And that was really what launched me once I graduated. That launched me into a path of entrepreneurship and whatnot. It is important to note that I did get a full-time job. I was offered a full-time job, like a corporate 9-to-5 job in Center City before I graduated, and I took that job. Really wasn't qualified for it, but I took it because they were offering me a salary that I essentially, needed as a college graduate. But I was able to then, one, learn the corporate world and like how they navigate being, how to be a leader in a corporate world. And I was also able to take my salary and reinvest it back into my business, which eventually turned into Rec. What Rec is now, and that was a long-winded intro, so sorry for all that backstory. But what Rec is now, the best way to think of it is like a gym membership, but for artists. So we actually run a physical space, but we also run, and even more so today, a digital community for creators, for musicians, for photographers, videographers, any kind of really creative entrepreneur. And they pay a membership, $49 a month, and they could access our space. And our space went from a little spot in North Philadelphia at the corner of 9th and Dolphin, is where we started our business, on the 4th floor of a warehouse. And we only had 5 or 10 members. Soon we had 200 members who wanted to come to our space with recording studios and cameras and things. And then just in December, we opened up our flagship facility at 9th and Market in Center City, and now have over 900 active members who call our space home. So that's a quick flash of how we were able to grow our business. I can answer plenty more questions on that, but that is a short to long intro.
No, yeah, that's great. That's so much information. So that's a good backstory for sure on the whole creation of it. So yeah, I think we just we might need to dive deeper. I think like how did you really come up with the idea, kind of transitioning from doing this stuff kind of locally at Temple to eventually making it, what Rec is today? And why did you feel some of that was so important, even at the stages of being at Temple and then currently kind of now?
Yeah, I mean, what I love about our business is that it was created because of a need, right? I think we hear a lot in the entrepreneur world that the best ideas comes from the need of the founders, right? It's not just something that we thought other people would want, but I didn't need. I knew we needed a space to create, a space to navigate being an artist and making money from your art, or being an entrepreneur and making money from your business. We were just like, I was a student, I was starting these shows, but I was also a manager of my friends who were hip hop artists. And all the money that I saved or made at my corporate job, I would reinvest in their art. And we would be spending it on studio time, on videos. And I literally spent all the money I had and made no progress on anyone's art career, on making money as an artist. And I started realizing that was a similar pattern to a lot of our creative friends that we would meet. No one knew how to navigate. The only solution anyone had in the arts or creative community, and I'm sure a lot of people might have heard this, is I need to leave Philadelphia and I need to go to New York, or I need to go to Los Angeles, because that is where I can make money as an artist. And what I started realizing, me and my business partners and my team, Philadelphia has the resources to make money from your art. There are businesses that want to support, there are venues, there are creatives, like some of the most talented people in the world come from Philadelphia. And Philadelphia in the 90s and the 2000s, or even back in the 60s, 70s, we've always had a great cultural landscape, a great roots of culture and music. And so how could we tap into that in today's day and age to provide a better infrastructure for local artists? So that was kind of the why behind why we were doing it. It's because we needed a place to create, a place to learn, and a place to meet other people. And we, instead of just spending all of our money in other places, we decided one day we're going to do this ourselves. We have the means, and we're gonna give it a shot. So that was a little bit of the why behind why we did this.
Yeah, no, that's great. That makes a lot of sense, and that definitely ties into the next question I had for you about kind of being in Philly and existing in Philly. You definitely touched on it because it seems like on the face, like you said, people might want to just go to New York or LA or somewhere else, but how has it been, being in Philly, and, how has that kind of startup scene within Philly and the culture played a role into, where Rec is at this point now?
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that Philadelphia, we were able to do what we did so far because of the way Philadelphia is set up. It's hard for me to believe that we would be able to go from start to finish and what we were able to create in another city. Obviously able to say that biasly because I just did it in Philadelphia and I love the city. But a couple of things about Philadelphia that I think are really special. One, it's a large city. It's one of the largest cities in the country, but it has a very, very small town feel to it. You know, New York does not have a small town feel to it, right? Los Angeles does not have a small town feel to it. Philadelphia, it's one of the largest cities in the country, but yet still acts as a very small town. We're very small, we're very neighborhood based, and all these small neighborhoods make up for what this great city is. So when you operate in Philadelphia, you can actually make a difference in a small neighborhood that is felt across the entire city versus these other large cities where you could make an impact in a neighborhood and no one else outside that neighborhood hears about it. And I think in Philadelphia, the way our community is just set up is that you can make a really strong impact in a local neighborhood and it make an entire impact on the entire city. And we were able to do that on a per artist level with the events that we were throwing and just some of the partnerships we were creating. And the word spread very quickly about the work we were doing and people started reaching out to us as the outlet. Like businesses would reach out to us as the outlet in order to support the creative community, right? Some of the bigger businesses in the city, they have missions to support arts and the creative community. You can look up, whether it's Comcast or Blue Cross, these companies that live in Philadelphia, they're from Philadelphia, go on their website, you'll see that they have these initiatives to support creatives and the arts. And a lot of people were funneling that through what we were doing because of the impact we were making early on. What I also found is, and I use Comcast as an example, I know a lot of people have like negative connotations of Comcast and what they've done. For us, they were one of the pillars for how we were able to grow our business. And I say that because it started off just on Twitter with a direct message to someone who was newly appointed the head of entrepreneurship for Comcast, and they were based out of Philadelphia. This was probably 7 years ago. I was about 19 or 20 years old, 21 years old, and I DM'd the person who just got this new job on Twitter. Said, hey, I'm a local young Philadelphia entrepreneur. I care a lot about the arts. I would love to meet with you and see how I can be helpful in your new job role. Kind of a shot in the dark. I'm sure if you're in New York and you're messaging these to these big executives, probably it's a 1 in a million shot. But in Philadelphia, reaching out to some of the local leaders, there's a high probability you're going to get their attention if you just kind of address it the right way, whatever the right way is. And we can talk more about what the right way is. But it went from a DM to, hey, she got back to me saying, hey, why don't you shoot me an email, tell me more about what you're about. Next thing I know, I had lunch with this person, had coffee with this person, started building a relationship. Next thing you know, Comcast is one of our clients. And just as a small business, and still really very, very, very much in the bootstrap stages. But I say all that to say, the leaders here in Philadelphia understand the impact that can be made on a small level and how it can trickle through the entire community. A lot of the leaders recognize that and will give young entrepreneurs a chance at whatever ideas they're pitching because they understand the impact that can be made. And I feel like that's very specific to Philadelphia. And we've taken advantage of that by doing that same strategy of just reaching out to these leaders in a very persistent but professional manner, letting them give us time to talk about our ideas and watching those manifest. So
yeah,
that's my thoughts on Philly.
That's awesome. Those are some really good examples. And I love that story too. That's a great one. And yeah, I think that can transition into kind of what Rec looks like today, where from what you built kind of prior, who are, the people that are really using the space right now? Kind of what's your kind of ideal customer look like in that sense? And, who uses Rec currently?
Yeah. So let's just think about Rec normally and not in this like pandemic crisis mode for a second. Our main product is our space, right? 9th and Market. We are now in the new fashion district. If anyone's been to the new mall, the former gallery, we're right at 9th and Market. I'm very thankful. We just got, right before this whole thing shut down, we got a big big signs on the building. So when you're driving down Market Street next time, when you're at 9th Street, you'll see our Rec, a place for creators, big signs on both 9th and Market Street. Once you're in the mall, our space is 10,000 square feet. It's on the 2nd floor of the mall. We're above Burlington Coat Factory. And it's kind of weird to think about like an art center in a mall. Like who's recording music in a mall? And that whole concept was really strange for us to even think about when we had this opportunity. But it works out really well because we have two parts of our space. We have the mall facing part, which is a public facing aspect for anyone who's in the mall can just walk right into our space, and it's a retail store and a coffee shop. And in the retail store, we're selling the merchandise of the local arts community. So any of our artists who can make t-shirts or albums or paintings, we're able to sell the work of the local artist in a mall where we're going to see millions of people walking throughout the year. So that's a whole new concept for us. On top of having a coffee shop, which is an entirely new concept for us, right? We're this bootstrap temple basement startup that worked in a warehouse for 4 years, and now out of nowhere, we're in a mall selling coffee and retail. So that's just the front facing. That makes up for about 1,500 square feet of the 10,000 square feet. And the retail portion, that's for anyone to come and enjoy and for anyone to be a customer of ours, right? That's for anyone who wants to support local artists, who wants to buy a cup of coffee. So there's no real demographic for that. But right before you get into the back of like our space, which is where the sweet spot is, that's where it all really happens. We have a members check-in desk. So if anyone's interested in what's going on every day, what's happening here, what's going on, what's the space all about, they can check in with our membership team. And then behind the doors is 14 private studios that our members can have access to using their Rec app that we've built. And that's recording studios, that's visual labs, that's for photo and video backdrops and lighting. We have rehearsal space for bands. We have a whole podcasting center. We have editing rooms. We have dance rooms. We have painting rooms. And then we have a huge co-working space for artists just to have their home base if they need a place to work. And that's for any type of creative or any type of entrepreneur. It's similar to like that WeWork model of just having an open space to work. So anyone who has a membership can go there and pull out their laptop and get to work. And then in that same space, it doubles as a Live Nation concert venue. So we have a big stage that's inside of the co-working space, and we throw concerts, parties, panels, workshops all in there. So I say all that because if you could use any of those things I just said, you're a potential member of ours. If you need to create content, if you need to create audio or visual content, producers, engineers, like I said, dancers or illustrators, and need that space to be messy and paint, we have all of those things. Our ideal customer is someone who's usually just about to finish up college or just out, a year or two out of college, and has a desire to turn their art or their creativity into a business and wants to make money from their passion. And they just need either the space to do it, the resources to do it. They're looking for other creative people to connect with, or they need the strategies on how to actually get it done. And if you need one of those three things, our space is super useful for you. If you need all of those three things, which a lot of our members do, we are just like the ultimate all-in-one package for our community to take advantage of. What's also just really interesting about our business is everything I just said about our space and our community, that's all one half of our business model. The other half of our business model is actually this creative agency that represents all of the creatives that use our space. So if you're a member that signs up for Rec and you are a photographer, you now have an agent who can go to businesses in the community and say, hey, if you need photography for your upcoming conference or for your whatever, you can go through Rec and we will give you a whole portfolio of creatives that you can choose from. And so we do that for businesses all around the city and starting to get all around the country to tap into your local creative market and the creatives that are there. So we serve as like this middle ground and this agent for these creatives, but also serve as a project manager for the businesses. So our customer uses our space, but we also have a customer that's on the business side that needs access to the creatives. So we kind of sit in two different lanes, which is a very interesting concept, and also just kind of makes us unique kind of worldwide, because we're really the only ones that have a model that does both of these things.
Yeah, no, that's a really great explanation, and really interesting too, because of the, dual-sided components that you explained. And yeah, I think that's a great explanation. So
Thanks.
I think I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about the new space as well, because I know you talked a lot about it, but how has that been since transitioning over there compared to kind of where you guys were before? And again, obviously, kind of before all this happened with the shutdowns and whatnot. But how has it been up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're in a tough time right now, but it has been a fantastic journey to open our space in December 2019. We opened up our doors December 1st. It's important to understand like where we came from. Like we were on the fourth floor of a warehouse at the corner of 9th and Dauphin. I'm sure most of you all can have a good understanding of like where Dauphin is and what would happen if you went down to 9th. It's not in the best area in Philadelphia. The zip code that we were in is actually the most poverty-stricken zip code in Philadelphia. We were on the fourth floor of a warehouse that was built in 1840. We had no ceilings in our space. You had to walk up 4 flights of steps. There was no central AC, but yet we were still able to build a community of 200 paying artists to come to this space. For whatever reason, they thought this was a useful space. It was either because they needed the microphone that we had, or they just liked the concept of being a part of a community. So the fact that we were able to get 200 paying members there, that gave us the ability. What we did is over the course of about 1.5 to 2 years, we raised over $3.5 million for the first time that we ever raised any money right out of the gate, just raising $3.5 million to go build this space that, we had no experience with real estate, with construction. We've never done any of that before. And spent about 1.5 years just learning it all in real time, with other people's capital, and figured out how to build this. So we were able to get through all of that. December 1st, we built the space. We went from 200 members to 900 members in just 3 months, and it took us 3 years to get to 200 members. It took us 3 months to go from 200 to 900. So the learning curve of working with 4x plus times of new members and what the customer service looked like, that was just all learning in real time. But what was amazing was that we were able to build what we always dreamed of building when we first opened our space at 9th and Dauphin. We always wanted to provide, a state-of-the-art creative center for our community and provide access to local creators in Center City, right? I'm sure we hear a lot about artists being displaced because of things that are being built in Center City or in even other areas of the town, and specifically what the gallery meant to the creative community for years. And then here you hear about the fashion district coming in and bringing these big flagship tenants. And what does that mean for a local creative? Do they have no involvement in this new billion-dollar project of the fashion district? And for us to be able to plant the flag of local creativity in Center City, in the heart of Center City, that was so important to us. So I say all of that to say the experience has been incredible, mainly watching the artists who only knew 9th and Dauphin in the warehouse, and now here they are walking into the Center City, multi-million-dollar facility with high-end cameras and great equipment, and it's still the same price. $49 a month, and that gets them the access to, some of the best microphones and cameras you can get your hands on for no additional cost other than your membership. So it's been my favorite part is watching these people walk in for the first time, eyes light up of like, wow, I have access to all of these things. And probably my entire life, I thought I never would. And that's very meaningful to us.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really great story about the space. And you mentioned it a little bit too about kind of your exposure and influence outside of Philly also. And I see you're wearing the shirt for Amplify Philly as well. But I was interested to hear a little bit more about Amplify Philly itself and kind of your partnership and experience with South by Southwest. Yeah. And again, I know this year kind of didn't pan out, but in prior years and how that's been going, I'd love to hear more about how that worked.
Yeah. Amplify Philly is like a whole nother pivot under essentially the Rec Philly umbrella. And what's funny is the story I told you about Comcast and getting coffee with the head of the Entrepreneurship. That coffee led to the launch of Amplify Philly, which is a really interesting story because Comcast, the first business I did with them is for them being the leading sponsor of Amplify Philly. They were the first sponsor in when we decided to do Amplify Philly. And what Amplify Philly is now, it's actually its own nonprofit that I am on the board of. And it's a 501c3. And the whole point of Amplify Philly is to spotlight Philadelphia internationally. Who are the great entrepreneurs, artists, businesses, startups, all of the great industries in Philadelphia? What does that look like to promote internationally? And specifically at the South by Southwest conference was where we started this idea. So 7 years ago, I went and threw a concert under that first Broad Street Music Group brand that I talked about in the beginning. I threw a Broad Street Music Group concert at South by Southwest, an official one. Really super lucky, and there's a whole story about perseverance on how we just were able to do that. But it was the first time Philadelphia had like a music concert based around the city. It was like all Philadelphia artists. 7 years ago, we were able to book, I'm sure a few of you know, Lil Uzi Vert. He's number one on the Billboard charts with his new album. We booked him for $500 during our first concert. Second year when we did this, we booked Lil Dicky. Third year, we were able to book all of these awesome Philadelphia-based artists and represent them down at such a huge conference. But really what happened was after the first year I did it, it got the attention of the city saying we should be down at South by Southwest talking about our city, considering that, some kids just did it for a concert. We should be doing it for our tech scene, our startup scene. So I essentially volunteered to do that initiative. We created Amplify Philly as like the brand behind it. And then I went and fundraised business to business the first year we raised $80,000 to bring the city down and be represented in the trade show plus a concert. Second year we raised $130,000. The third year is where it started to really grow. We raised close to $300,000, and then we took over a whole bar and restaurant and called it the Philly House. And for multiple days and nights we did panels, workshops, concerts, and it was all about Philadelphia. So now we're in our fifth year. Obviously we weren't able to do it this year. We're actually going to turn Rec Philly at 9th and Market into the Philly House as a way to keep the initiative alive. As soon as we're able to, be together outside of Zooms, we're going to host the Amplify Philly House at Rec, and any of y'all can come and check it out, what that looks like. But it's a localized version, and then hopefully we'll be back there next year. So yeah, that's a little Amplify Philly. It's like now it's really, when I talked about our space and our agency, now Amplify Philly for Rec is just a project that our agency manages and works with the businesses to execute that project. So a lot of moving pieces, but yeah, that's a little bit about Amplify Philly.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's great too. Some really, really cool stuff in there to unpack, but
yeah.
I think for the sake of time, maybe we'll try and shrink back to Temple a little bit. And maybe if you could touch on the last couple things before we move into the Q&A, just to keep an eye on time, maybe, talk maybe a little bit more about what it was kind of like doing this and starting this from the beginning, like at Temple, and kind of what you would say to the audience that we saw, is mostly students. How can they kind of work to, maybe some words of wisdom in that way of like, how can students, begin doing stuff like this,
Yeah, and shout out to Nicholas, who says I kind of look like Lil Dicky. That's really funny. So Temple, and how can students kind of have access to this? So, I credit a lot of how I was able to get everything started to a specific class that I had at Temple. I was in the advertising, I had an advertising degree, and my capstone for advertising, and if anyone is in advertising, if you can just drop a 1, if you're in like specifically in an advertising direction, if you can drop a 1 in the comments just so I can see if there's anyone in particular that's in there. But the capstone for advertising was a program called Diamond Edge Communication. And what that looked like was everyone got a real world assignment. It wasn't like, I'm sure a lot of y'all in school are getting like these assignments where you have to create a whole presentation on how to pitch a business about their website or how they should fix something, but it's not even like a real thing. It doesn't actually go to the client. It's just a project. This particular project was a real world assignment that put us in the field to actually execute something that would matter. And for Diamond Edge Communications, it was the first time I ever had to plan a real event. And it made me plan our advertising awards for the department. And it was the first time I had to book a band, get sponsors, this and that. And I just fell in love with that project. And that was what made me want to keep doing the event planning side of what I was doing with Broad Street at the time, and now what I do with Rec. So what to take from that is there are real projects that you're probably working on in school. There's plenty that I worked on and realized this is not what I want to do, but keeping your eyes open for the projects that really invigorate your soul. This project took me to a different level of things I cared about and wanted to do. Like they gave me the outline for how to do the advertising awards thing. Like, here, this is what you should do. This is how you should plan it. And I saw it. I was like, I can plan something way better than this. They didn't say anything about sponsorship, nothing about live music, but I was like, isn't this what it should be? If we're going to do a whole celebration, we should be getting music. We should get a buffet. We should get a photographer. And, I was able to take that project and do it like it's never been done before. And the only reason why I did it is because I had a passion to do it. I was able to unlock something I didn't realize was the case. And I was really thankful from that class, specifically that professor, Professor Mara, who I'll never forget. And that is what woke me up to how I wanted to do this. So I say all that to say, if you're a student right now and you're just in these classes, you don't really see how it's, unlocking anything for you. Like, you have to be super present and aware of like what work are you doing that you weren't asked to, but you're doing it because you have a passion to do it and you care about it. Like the work I was doing for that advertising stuff and the work that I was doing, even throwing the shows in my basement, I didn't think that was going to be my career. I didn't think like my first couple of basement shows, I would have had this trajectory. I was doing it because I wanted to do it. What work do you want to be doing? And that is what will really help you figure out how you can be spending your time, your additional time, your free time is the stuff that you're doing and no one asked you to do it, but it's still work. What is that work? And then I would really do a couple exercises to walk down that lane of like, what does that mean for me personally as an entrepreneur or, in my career development? Like, what is the work I like to do? And that was what, that class at Temple helped me unlock. Otherwise, just like being at that school, I'm sure you can all relate, like there's just hustle is in the air at Temple, right? Like everyone is hustling, everyone is doing their own thing, grinding. It's different than other schools. And like just that mentality of being in the city, in this urban environment. I grew up in Bucks County in the suburbs, came to the city, growing up for sports games, and that was just about it. I learned my grit and my hustle from being at Temple. And it's just from just being out and just being engaged in all the different, I was in the advertising club. I did a little in the marketing association, I believe. As many internships as I can get my hands on, took advantage of any opportunity I could to just kind of learn how to be busy doing the things I like to do. That way, once you graduate, you're not used to not being busy and not doing things that you enjoy doing. I can't imagine if like all I knew was like kind of just like using my free time to play video games or this and that. Like that's what you would do once you graduated. For me, once I graduated, I only knew how to fill my day with useful things. And I kept a calendar straight through 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like, how am I using my time productively? And I did that all throughout school. And then as soon as I graduated, I just knew I had to keep that same habit going.
I love that. Yeah, that's some really good stuff. And we could probably talk for another hour on a bunch more questions and diving into this. But I do want to kind of transition over to the chat. I see we already have a bunch of questions in there, and I'll say to the audience again, feel free to keep dropping questions in. We were gonna try and end the session around 12:50, so maybe for the remaining time we'll kind of go through and just answer some of these questions from the audience here. So yeah, it looks like the first one we got, I saw that one ping when it was earlier on. I think this one was in relation to the shows at Temple from Nicholas here. What was the cut that Dave took from organizing these events, and how much would artists receive in relation to the total cost that they were paying? So some of the early days, I guess.
Yeah, the early days were pretty wild for us because we were coming from no money, right? Any money I had just like I don't even think I had a checking account at that point. I didn't think I ever even signed up for a bank when I first started throwing shows. So it was very bootstrapped. It was very like The stuff in the basement, I don't think anyone was getting paid for anything. I think it was like $5 at the door. That money goes to philanthropy. The artists were just performing. There was like no money exchange to anybody because it was just really like, who knows what we're doing right now? Who knows what this will be? If you want to do it, come feel free to go do it. Once we were able to go to the bars, the model was still super interesting because I've never done this before professionally. So we had like, for us to make sure we were going to have money, we charged the artists like $20 to perform, which I like thinking about now, I hate. I would never, ever, ever in my wildest dreams charge an artist to perform anymore. But initially it was like $20 to get on the lineup. And then if you bring out 20 people, you get your 20 back plus like a percentage of the door. It was like, you know, we were just cutting up the pie however we could because we needed money to essentially keep the shows going. You know, some of the venues require a $100 rental or a $150 rental. But once we started proving that we could bring people to these bars, I could stop paying a venue rental and I was able to stop having to charge the artist and I was able to start tapping into the bar sales. So it's really hard to have any leverage when you're first starting negotiating with like bars or venues or whatever it is. But once you put yourself out there and you do the free work, which a lot of people have a lot of different thoughts on doing free work. For me, I did a ton of free work. Years I didn't get paid for anything, but I was able to build relationships with folks. And so that was kind of the way it went down. Once we were kind of in our groove, it was like a 80-20 split, both whatever we make at the door, we'd charge like $5 or $10 at the door. We'd split 20% to the bar and the bar would give us 20% of their sales. And that was kind of how we went down.
Gotcha. And so it looks like next here we have from John, business is not without obstacles. What were some of the challenges you had to overcome along the way?
Yeah, I mean, just a million obstacles and you just got to be ready for it, literally it all. And just be ready for, you hear this all the time, but get ready to fall flat on your face countless times. And just like the entrepreneurs that really care about what they're doing will prevail. For us, it was money, right? As it will be for most people. The first 4 years, like our company made no money. We were just doing events and like doing the cool stuff to build our brand. And what was tough about that was I had a bunch of people who were volunteering for me and for us. Everyone knew it was all unpaid internship or whatever it is. And like everyone knew there was no money. No one was doing it for money. They were doing it to build portfolio, build experience, build network. Meanwhile, I have an intern who was literally with me during Broad Street Music Group, who's my creative director now, a full-time employee who was just stuck it out for years of unpaid internship until eventually we were able to create a business out of it. So the biggest obstacle is how do you lead a team? You usually need a team to execute anything that's bigger than yourself. How do you lead a team without paying your team? And now that I'm where I'm at, I would super, super advise to watch out for like unpaid internships because they'll come back to bite you because it's not the most legally ethical thing to be doing, right? There are ways to go about it, college credits and things of that nature. But how do you build your team without compensating your team? And just to quickly speak on the solution, it's have a clear vision for what you're doing. And if you can have a clear vision and you're willing to put in the work, as a leader, you're putting in the work and you have a clear vision, people can relate to that vision and they see you putting in the work. So they feel it's okay for them to also put in that work during this time. So lead by example and have a clear vision when you don't have the money. And if you're passionate about it enough and you're determined enough, you'll break through the other obstacles along the way.
Yeah, that's great. And then next up from Brian here, we have what sparked the idea to have an agency and how were you able to build that side of the organization?
Yeah, so the agency actually came first before our membership. And the reason why I came first is because I just positioned myself and my business as the person in the city who could represent artists. And if you wanted to do cool, creative, fun stuff, you would come through Rec because we are connected to the creative community. It was before we had a membership. It was just, we just threw a bunch of shows and we knew a bunch of artists. So if you wanted to tap into any of those artists, we're a quick way to do it. Really, South by Southwest, year one was the first thing we ever did for any business. Before we offered a service, we threw South by Southwest's event. And doing that well and professionally opened up the door to all these businesses, you know, the Comcast, for all the startups. They're like, hey, Dave, I saw what you did at South by. Can you do something here in Philly that was this or like that? And next thing you know, just one after the other, being a professional, building strong relationships, that kind of just rolled all the way through of having, you know, consistent people coming to us for services. And then our membership came along. And then our membership, it started being really the heart of the membership came when we said, instead of just booking anyone for these gigs, right? Someone just asked us for a singer in their lobby. Instead of just booking anyone who we thought makes sense, why don't we have a club of people that we can choose from that is more strategic, right? It was like, how do we be more strategic with who we're booking? And that was like almost the beginning of the membership idea. And then things started kind of unfolding from there.
Gotcha. And next up here, we have, you know, how did you raise the capital? And did you go to angel investors, public crowdfunding, grants, loans?
Yeah. Raising the capital is definitely the most challenging thing of all the things we've had to do so far. Mainly because and my business partners had no experience in doing it. So like how to get it done was a mystery, and we just fell flat on our face for the first 6 of the 18 months. At the end of the day, we raised money both through angel investors. We have no venture capital on our table right now. It was all through individuals who cared about what we were doing and saw it being a promising thing. We took out debt via the city. So there's like a company called PIDC that we worked with to get debt from. And then we also work with our landlord to be able to give us money to build something really cool in their space. So that was how the $3.5 million, you can essentially cut that into thirds, and that's how we fundraised our project. In 2015, we launched a Kickstarter campaign to launch Rec Philly before it was even a membership, and we failed. We tried to raise 50 grand, we only raised 30 grand, we lost everything we had. That's a whole failure story in itself, but we did not do any crowdfunding. There was no grants as well. It was angels and through the banks and through our landlord. And just the thing that you need to know is, and you know, this is very cliche entrepreneur talk, but like I said, the first 6 months of our fundraising, we heard the word no from 200 investors, maybe like 150 to 200 investors. And that's not an exaggeration. That is, we made a list of all the different people that we had relationships with that could help us, all the different things we found in research, and we started just reaching out, setting up meetings, and it was just no across the board. And it was no because we were offering a deal that didn't make sense for the type of investors we were reaching out to. And it only took us until one of the investors who really cared about what we were doing, who was super smart and was ready to invest, but in a different way, in a different deal. So he helped advise us on our deal structure. And then once he said, hey, if you do it that way, I'll come in at, you know, whatever the amount was. As soon as he changed the deal, we went back to all these people, went out to all these new people, and then it started kind of, you know, unrolling from there.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great answer to that one. And we're running a little bit low on time, so I think there's only a few more questions in here, but maybe we could do kind of a speed round for these last few.
Sure.
We got one from Christopher here about how were you able to reel in those initial paying members without having an existing community?
Yep.
You know, what was the initial value being one of the first?
Yeah, we invited our friends and provided a space, and that was it. They came, they said, hey, I love this. How can I get involved? Can I pay hourly to come here? We said, no, you can help pay our rent. And we had like 4 people put money up for rent. And then next thing there was 8 people, 20 people. And then we created a business model out of it.
And then next from, looks like Cody here. Let's see, we have, I noticed your live stream concert series.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on aspiring concert streams given the current climate, particularly sponsors or things like that?
Yeah, I think creating like an exclusive environment for any like live stream social events, like we did it on Instagram Live, and that's very much not an exclusive environment. It's also not the best like environment to do like a high quality tech produced event. So I would move to a more like private platform. We're going to do our next concert via Zoom. We just think we'll get better quality and a better control of the audience. And then once you start doing that well and you can prove that people are coming, then I think you can start having sponsorship conversations. I wouldn't have the sponsorship conversations until you know you're consistently doing whatever you're doing and you're going to have the audience for it.
Then Thomas asks about Amplify Philly. Is there any way that someone from Philly can get involved with Amplify Philly or support the cause?
Yeah, absolutely. Ways to get involved in all different things. And I'll even plug our Rec Philly internship that we're going to be launching June 1st. We do semester internships, college credit internships. I'll drop my email right here. Anyone who's on this, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email and we can chat offline about Amplify Philly, Rec Philly, or even just tips that we weren't able to cover today. We'd love to chat with anyone who took the time to be in this event today.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. That's
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely.
And next from, let's see, we got, who was your favorite artist that you've worked with?
Probably Tierra Whack. If anyone knows Philly hip hop music right now, Tierra Whack is probably the number one. There's Meek Mill, there's Lil Uzi Vert, and then there's Tierra Whack. Super, super creative. We booked her in 2015. We worked with her more recently in the past year or so. We actually sell her merchandise in our store. So she's probably one of my favorites. There's also a local band called Foxtrot and the Get Down. They've been a member for 2.5 years. I love their music. They're like a nationally traveling band now. Played South by, they played Firefly, Foxtrot and the Get Down. They're one of my favorites.
Nice.
Yeah.
And last two here, looks like, are there any networking tips you can give us and opportunities for connecting with A&Rs for artists?
Yeah, I mean, networking tips, the usual things are, I'm going to say, are first and foremost, it's all about relationships. It's not about what can some other people do for you. When you're still in school or coming out of school, you better be ready to just be offering your value to them and not try to extract their values for you. It will come in time, but the best networking things that have happened in my life are because it wasn't about what they could do for me. I just wanted to find out about them and how I could help them out. So treating every new person you meet as a relationship and not just a business card to hey, can you please help me? Specifically when you're younger. Now where I'm at, I try to, sometimes I'll ask more, quicker because I have more value to offer. I have a whole beautiful space and community, so it's quicker to be transactional. But when you don't have that leverage, you need to build relationships organically. And then go into anything, I say this all the time, but go to anything with a smile. No one wants to talk to a grouchy person. And when you're reaching out to people, they probably won't answer you in your first outreach over email. So make sure you're following up. Never take it personally that someone doesn't reach out. Your initial outreach should be consisting of a 2-step process. Your initial outreach and then your follow-up a week later. So I would take that to the grave as the number one thing that has gotten us to where we are is my persistent follow-up with all these individuals.
Perfect. Hey, well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. We could definitely talk for so much longer about, everything you talked about here, but I want to thank you again. We are kind of closing in on the time, so I think we're going to have to wrap it up, but I think everyone here really appreciates you, stopping by and chatting with us today. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate everyone being on the call, asking the questions. Like I said, dave@recphilly.com, ready to chat, and we can take it from there.